This is Motorsport Radio.
Welcome to Motorsport Radio. It is up-and-coming Brighton driver and Motorsport UK Academy driver. It is Will Hunt. Hello. Welcome to Motorsport Radio, Will.
Hi, Lester. Thanks very much for having me.
So, for those who don't know too much about you, Will, just explain sort of who you are and sort of what you were doing in 2020.
Yeah, sure. So I'm 23 years old. As you said there, I'm from Brighton, just slightly north of. And for the past 3 years, I've been racing in the Radical SR1 Cup with Radical Sports Cars.
Radical sports cars. For those who don't know, it's a is it classed as a single-seater car or a sports car? I know there's been a bit of debate about that over the years, isn't there?
Yeah. No, I mean, it depends who you ask, really. I call them a sports prototype. Some people call them closed wheels. Some people call them open wheels. It's really down to preference. But yeah, I call them a prototype.
Fair enough. That's and you've been racing in them for the past few years, since what was it? 20. I mean, you're relatively quite sort of new to full-time racing yourself, though, aren't you? Starting in something like 2018 or 17.
Yeah. So I started with Radicals in 2018, and before that, 2017, I had a test in a British F4 car, and that was really where my car racing career started. Before that, I was just really working on simulator stuff. Managed to get a gig with Adrian Quaife-Hobbs at his simulators Pro Sim. And the idea back then was to work towards an F4 campaign. Sadly, budget and other things didn't quite work out and allow that. So for me, it was looking at alternatives at getting into motorsport. And so I linked up with Scorpio Motorsport and John Pettit there. And ever since, we've just been working together. Radical's been our goal at the moment. Now in my fourth year, so we're 1 year over our targeted plan. Our goal this year is going to be the title for sure. We're just having a quick look at some of the fantastic races that you've been in. You've multiple podium winner, I suppose. You've been on the podium there, and also I'm reading on your website, Will, that you actually have the lap record for a single-seater at the Albacete circuit in Spain. Is that right? Yeah, so that was on my first ever test run there. I'll be honest to you, Lester, I don't know if that still stands anymore, because it's been a few years now, and I'm sure some other people have had a go.
But at the time, though, it was...
Yeah, no, it was. Albacete is a small circuit located in Spain. The team were going out there with Jack Manchester, who at the time was racing in the Radical SR3s, now racing in Asian Le Mans. Yeah. And he was out there in a Radical, and John said, look, let's get you out in the F4 car. So, last minute flight, headed down there. I got 1 day out in the car. At the end of it, we set the single-seater lap record, which was quite an achievement in our first time out in a racing car for sure. It makes me think, imagine what we could have done in a season's campaign in F4. But, if you live on those things, you'll be annoyed a bit later on down the line. So I'm just happy with the choices that we made.
Always best to look forward, especially Absolutely. In 2021. It's easy to look back over all the things that we all missed in 2020, more racing, that would have been good. But let's look forward. Well, talking about 2021 this season, what will you be doing this year? What have you got planned and confirmed? Sure.
So I don't know how much I could say, but I should right now be out in Bahrain, taking part in the Gulf 12 Hours. Nothing was confirmed. It was all kept quite hush-hush. But we had some, due to COVID and some last-minute budget issues, obviously we couldn't make it out there. So that was going to be the start to my year. But ultimately, my main focus this year is the 2021 Radical SR1 Cup. I consider last year as a breakthrough for us in terms of finding out what we need to do as a unit, as a team, to win races and have a successful year. And, we were, unfortunately, because it was such a short championship last year, we didn't get a chance to have a shot at the title, given a DNF that we had. So, it's all about putting together those elements that went well and bringing home the title this year in the SR1 Cup. And then going forward from that, we've had a few tests now with some GT cars. And for me, I feel like that naturally is the next progression for me in my career. But the most important thing for me is being sure that I can walk before I can run, which is why I'm not trying to test myself too much at the moment.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned about the endurance race that you had your sights set on. I certainly didn't know about that. That would have been interesting. Surely, though, at some point we will see, budget depending, of course, you doing something like that in the future at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always been a great fan of endurance racing. I think the first time that I was actually out in a go-kart was when I was 6 at the go-kart track at Le Mans, just on the way back from a family holiday. So, I really enjoy the idea of endurance racing, working in a team environment. I've played a lot of team sports when I was younger, and I understand that, as a team, you can succeed as long as you all put your heads together. And it's something that excites me, going forward with the future. But, motorsport isn't a cheap sport, as you've mentioned. And for me, it's going to be about achieving that budget and bringing on board sponsors going forward.
Well, looking potentially, I know I said let's not look back, but I do want to just go back to how you even sort of got started in motorsport and sort of where you came from, really, and why you got started.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when I was quite young, my parents gave me quite a big opportunity. It was 2 choices. It was either to fund my education or to pay to get started in motor racing. And I think at the time must have been about 10 or 11, I thought with my heart, not my head. And I had loads of friends at school, and the natural thing for me was to stay with my friends at school and go through education, and revisit the idea of racing maybe a bit further on down the line. And so I finished my GCSEs, got the grades I wanted, and going forward to a different college, it opened up an opportunity for me. So as I mentioned, I got in touch with Adrian Quaife-Hobbs at ProSim, explained to him what it was that I wanted to do and what my ambitions were. And he got me down in his sim every fortnight, just testing, practicing F4 simulators. And we did that for about 6 or 7 months before we discovered that if we got in a real car, we'd probably have some pace. So he put me in touch with a few different teams. But ultimately, the thing that it always came down to was the budget side of it, which at the time wasn't very large for me. So we were really sort of back on the sidelines, as it were. And that was when I finished college, and I was on my first day of my work as an estate agent. And I was sitting at the desk, and I thought, no, I don't want to be sitting behind a desk. For my whole childhood, I wanted to be a racing driver, and I'm not going to just give up on that. So I remember one day at work, just on the computer the whole day. My boss would probably hate me for saying it, but I was just looking at all these racing teams, just trying to find all these different names of these grassroots racing teams. And I was calling them one by one. Every time the boss walked out of the office on his lunch break, I was calling up all these teams saying, look, this is what I want to do. Can you help me? And I tried a few different teams, but the one that got back to me the quickest was John at Scorpio Motorsport, who at the time was racing the F4s. And he said, well, look, we haven't got a driver this year. We've got the car, and we're not too sure if we're going to be running the car this year. So come and have a go in it. We're taking it to Albacete. So, and then we go back to, fast forward to when I was at Albacete and that experience I had there. I met some great people on that day, including Kieran Clark at Kokora Performance. Kieran himself is quite a big name in Formula racing. He runs a very high-profile development team using some of the world's greatest drivers to help accelerate their careers. And he gave me lots of lifelong advice, which I took on board with me. And I think the one that I just remember every day is you've got to be in a position as a driver, Will, where if somebody invites you to race in the Smart Car Championship, you've just got to be so open to the opportunities that come up and say, yes, I'll do it. And that was something I remembered. And so I remember getting back from Spain, keeping in touch with John and just looking at all the options that were available to us. One of them was the Monoposto Championship, which is another great UK series. And in the end, John called me and said, look, Radical are doing something with the SR1. They're making a Gen 2 version. Come and have a go in it. So yeah, I got in touch with Dom Lee at Radical, went for a trial day, and fell in love with the car for what it is. Bang for buck, it's a fantastic package, and it's taught me a lot about driving. In such a short space of time. I'm going up against drivers who have spent years karting or racing in other series, and we're giving them a run for their money. So it's a fantastic series, and I couldn't recommend it any more to anyone else who's wanting to start off their career.
Well, you've certainly had at least 3 seasons in the SR1 Cup, and it's actually quite a competitive, for those who don't know, series or cup, isn't it? There's quite a few people looking to make careers for themselves, like yourself, who often choose something like Radicals to start out in, and maybe then potentially do something like, I don't know, Porsche. Because I understand you have tested or been invited to test in a Porsche. Tell us more.
Yeah. So I finished my 2020 season, and like it is for most drivers, I'm sure after a season finishes, the off season starts, and you get a few messages from different manufacturers and teams saying, we got something you might want to come and try out. And so I got a message from Simon Green at Simon Green Motorsport, who was running the Porsche Carrera Cup, and I was aware of this at the time. And Porsche wasn't something I'd ruled out for the future. They've got a fantastic package in terms of their series of cars. And he invited me to Donington to try it out. Originally, the plan was to be at the official Porsche Taster Day, but sadly, due to COVID, that didn't take place. So we ran a test day with them, and I got out in the Cayman GT4 Club Sport, and the car was fantastic. It's when you are a youngish driver, I guess you could say, who's only ever really raced Radicals. As great as a manufacturer as that is, there's something special about jumping into a car and seeing such a big manufacturer's badge on the steering wheel as Porsche, and you realise, this is different. And turning the wheel for the first time into Redgate, you just, it takes a while to sink in that's the car that you're in. And then as it starts to go around, my experience and what the Radical SR1 has taught me is to be quickly. With the SR1, we race on a treaded tyre, and so there's a lot of movement as well as with the aero on the car. So there's a lot of sensations that you amplify in an SR1, which when you jump into a GT4 are slightly subjected a little bit. So I got up to speed really quickly in the Porsche, and it was something that I just really enjoyed and loved driving. My question now is that how all GT4s feel? And I guess the only answer to that is I'm going to have to go and try a few others out, I think.
Now you've got the taste for it.
Yeah. And it got off the radar from that. A few months before, I was out trying the new Ginetta G55 GTA, which again is a GT spec car, but a completely different spec, rear wheel drive, front engines. And you're sitting at the back of the car, whereas with the Porsche, you're sitting in the middle of it. And again, 2 completely different sensations from what are 2 similar categorized cars, which leads me again to think there's more GT styles out there that I've got to go and try, I think, before I can make my mind up where I want to go.
Well, that sounds like an interesting debate to have with yourself. Which one of these amazing cars should I need more testing? I think it's like whenever I get offered ice cream, I just need to test a bit more. Anyway, so going forward then, Will, into the future, you've already told us what you are looking to do, or what you want to do for 21, and maybe even some big cars as well. Some endurance racing. But further afield, though, I mean, what if you could, if money was no object, then what would you say your current dreams are? Your like, I don't know, racing career goals would be?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I have short, medium, and long term set out for myself. It's something that I'd always learned to do from my sports degrees that I've done. And ultimately, my long-term dream is to race in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I thought that would be a full circle for me in terms of my career, starting out at the karting circuit there and, getting a chance to race on the big circuit for the big race. That would be my ultimate dream. and I'm really confident in myself that I have the ability to continue to that objective. But for that, and then my medium-term goals, I mean, ideally, I'd like to be going towards a GT route of some sort, whether that's British GT, Carrera Cup, European Championships, wherever it may be. That's my next goal for myself. And then my short-term goal is to win the SR1 Cup. It's been a few years now. I feel like I've learned a lot about myself in the past couple of years. And I feel like now we understand what it takes to win a grassroots championship. So it's time to put all the pieces of the puzzle together and finally complete it.
And just finally then, you're somewhat of a kind of a journalist in your spare time, aren't you? When just Googling you before we started this interview, came across a couple of articles that you've done for a local paper or your regional paper, the Mid Sussex Times.
Yes.
I mean, is that something maybe you'd, look to get into? Is that actually you writing those things? I mean, I don't know if it's like a regular thing, is it? Sure.
So one thing that I'm aware of from my understanding of motorsport is that racing drivers nowadays have to be more than just racing drivers. There's so much more to it.
Content creators, everything.
Yeah. You look at, for example, Lando Norris now, he's become a podcaster of sorts. Nico Rosberg's retired and he's doing a lot of vlogging. You have to be more than that nowadays to expose yourself to the market, and especially if you're in a situation like myself where your career is going to be somewhat dependent on the sponsorship that you can bring in. You have to do something different to attract people. I'd like to think I have a good eye for writing a good story. So we got in touch with a few local media outlets, and JPR Media gave us what was at the time the Sussex Express. And we started writing smaller scale articles with them, just talking about, the races that I'd had, just filling in the readers with, motorsport, because in our area, there didn't seem to be much in terms of motorsport. It was mainly, Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club being sort of like the dominator of the sports section. So it was nice to put something different in front of the readers and sort of try and gain some interest from it. And then it is quite rare that you see local racing drivers featured in a local paper. It's often sort of a tiny little sidebar of, so and so did this in Formula One or somewhere. Yeah. I think the problem is grassroots motorsport drivers aren't getting the exposure that I think that we're entitled to. You see a lot of other sports out there where the grassroots get a lot of attention. And I think there's still this connotation out there from some people who don't understand or probably don't watch the sport, that it's not a sport. And that still exists, unfortunately. So it's nice to give those who do believe in the sport element of it that, this is what we're doing, and this is our grassroots sport, and this is why we love it. And it's great to see, when we have our races, especially with the MSVR section of the calendar, the attendees we get have a genuine enthusiasm for grassroots motor racing. And it's great to see people out there really appreciating and enjoying the sport for what it is, in all tiers. But I digress. I mean, after that, I got in touch, JPR Media gave us a section on the Mid Sussex Times, which is a much larger outlet for Sussex, covers a much larger area. And it was a nice feeling. I work with Adam, my PR at Leverage Promotions. Every time we're thinking of writing an article, we sit down for about an hour and we just talk it out, what we're going to talk about, how we're going to structure it, and then the literature of it. And then it gets published pretty much straight away. The newspaper comes out every Thursday. And I remember walking into Tesco to do my weekly shop, and the Mid Sussex Times is the first thing you see at your Tesco superstore in our area. And I remember just flipping it to the back page on the sports section. There I was, and I thought, why do I recognise this? Oh, wait, I wrote it. And, it's that sense of, I did this, and it's there and people can read it. And, it's something that I hope engages more people in our sport. Yeah, it must be a very proud moment to realise that when you're off to buy your cornflakes and stuff from Tesco.
I wish you all the very, very best for whatever happens in 2021, and in the future. And maybe you can come back and tell us potentially about all the future wins that you have ahead, no doubt. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on Motorsport Radio.
Thank you so much, Lester, for the time. I appreciate it.